Okay, so you'll remember that one of the characteristics of living things is that they have order. And so we have what is called the hierarchy of biological organization. And so this is going to go from the simplest unit of organization, and then it's going to get more complex and bigger as we go. So when we talk about living organisms, we say that we are composed of materials, we're composed of matter, we're composed of elements. And so these elements are made up of atoms. So let me look at it's pretty good. Okay, so atoms. What kinds of atoms do we have? We are carbon-based organisms. So we have carbon, we also have hydrogen, we also have nitrogen, we also have oxygen and phosphorus and sulfate. We have other elements, but these are the most common. And you could put these together and say schnapps as a way to just remember these are the ones that are the most common atoms that we have in our body. The next level of organization is when we get bonding between those atoms to make up molecules. So we have molecules. In chemistry, sometimes they also refer to these as compounds because they contain more than one type of atom. So we have 4 different types of molecules, organic molecules, categories of organic molecules. So we have carbohydrates, like glucose. We have proteins, like enzymes, and many hormones are also protein-based. We have lipids, like the phospholipids that make up our cellular membranes and our steroids. We also have nucleic acids like DNA and ATP are considered to be nucleic acids. So when we look at these 2 levels of organization, these are abiotic. Whenever you see A in front of a word, that means without. So these are without life. And so these are not considered, this level of organization is not considered living. So this next big step between living and non-living is at the cellular level. So we have cells, and this is the fundamental unit of life. So now we have those characteristics of living organisms that we talked about previously, like they require energy and materials to maintain a constant internal environment. They can evolve, populations of cells can evolve, like bacteria, for example. We could also talk about how they are capable of reproducing themselves. So some organisms are single-celled, like amoeba, for example, are single-celled organisms, but the majority of organisms are multicellular. So they have a higher level of organization. So when we talk about cells, we actually have 2 different types of cells that we see on the planet. And this would be prokaryotic cells and versus eukaryotic cells. So pro means before, kary means nucleus. Eu means good nucleus. So these lack a nucleus. They also lack organelles like mitochondria and endoplasmic reticulum, for example, or Golgi apparatus. These have a nucleus. They tend to also be, eukaryotic cells also tend to be, a nucleus. They tend to be larger. And so when we look at prokaryotic cells, that would be like bacteria. So bacteria are prokaryotic. We are eukaryotic, as are plants, and fungi are also eukaryotic. So when we look at our body, we are multicellular. So the next level of organization we see is that we have tissues. The study of tissues is called histology. We're going to talk about the different types of tissues in our bodies, but not today. But tissues are groups of cells that have a common structure and function. So for example, we could have muscular tissue, which is characterized in some cases like skeletal muscle, long cells that are capable of contracting. Okay. The next level would be organs. And organs contain more than one type of tissue. So if we looked at our stomach, we would see that it has an internal lining, which is composed of epithelial tissue. We can see that it has smooth muscle that allows for the stomach to contract, and then it has an outer covering of connective tissue. Even things like our muscles, individual muscles, like your biceps muscle, your triceps muscle, your pectoralis muscle, those are all individual organelles. Even nerves, like your sciatic nerve, is an individual organ. Even blood vessels are individual organs. So they have a higher level of complexity. And one of the interesting things is that as we increase in complexity, we tend to get new properties emerging. And so when we need to understand the stomach, it's not enough to just look at it as muscle. We need to also understand all of its other functions, like its nervous connection. It even has glandular tissue in it that produces hormones, right? And so understanding how that works requires us to be more holistic, to look at emergent properties. Okay. Then we have systems, and this is usually where medical doctors tend to focus on, is the system. So this is groups of organs. So for example, our digestive system does not just consist of the stomach, but it also consists of your esophagus and your small intestine, your large intestine, and then accessory organs like the liver and your pancreas, for example. And so again, understanding the system requires us to not just look at individual organs, but maybe looking at how the organs interact with one another. And this is really important when we get to the organism. So how do we tell when something is like a distinct individual organism? The way that we tell that is that they are able to reproduce. So at this level, we have capable of reproducing another individual. Okay. So oftentimes we focus on, when we're looking at our health, we might focus on systems. So for example, I might be concerned about my cardiovascular system, my heart and my blood vessels. And I might not even realize that my nervous system and my hormonal system, my endocrine system, and maybe even my digestive system play a role in or have their influence on my cardiovascular system. So for example, cortisol, stress hormone, can lead to high blood pressure. High blood pressure could lead to damage to my blood vessels, which could lead to possible stroke. Your digestive system influences just about everything in your body. And so understanding how those systems interact with one another is like the next big thing medicinally. So we have specialists like a gastroenterologist who might communicate with an endocrinologist and maybe the endocrine system and your digestive system we need to consider them both together in order to understand what the optimal level of health would be. Okay, so oftentimes we stop here at the organismal level, but let's just continue going because it's kind of important at this point in our evolution, in our biology, to understand the other higher levels. So a population is a group of individuals that can potentially reproduce. Now, the human Homo sapiens, right, we're actually kind of like one big global population, but we still tend to be kind of isolated in terms of like, it's more likely that you will have children with somebody from your own country than from somebody from another country, right? And so the population is important because generally when we think about microevolution, this is evolution at the population level. So we could talk about, like, say, for example, certain traits that are more common in certain populations than in others. Then at the next level, we have the community. And this is interaction between species. And our interaction with our microorganisms in our body is a good example of this. Our interaction with parasites, right? We have a community. Our interaction with plants is community as well. So that is important. The community interaction, right, is really important. And the next level is the ecosystem. So whereas the community is only the living part of the environment, this would be the living and non-living components. So maybe the amount of sunshine, right? The temperature, the amount of rainfall, right? So that would be the non-living part of our environment with the living. And then finally, we have the biosphere. And so that would be Earth, our planet. And we're realizing globally, right, we're more connected than humans are more connected than we thought we were, in terms of we are intertwined in this whole system. We are part of the system. Okay, so that is the hierarchy of biological organization.